So welcome everyone to this panel session on Beyond Competition, collaborative opportunities to seizing foreign and local direct investment in West Africa's real estate market. My name is Ayo, and I am Chief Operations Officer and Director of Research at Northport Real Estate. With me on this panel is Kwemi Onabanjo, who's the CEO of Real Projects, and John Oamen, co-founder and CEO of Livevend, a tech enabling company. Likely to join us as we go along will be Dr. Tunde Reese, who's founder and president of First World Communities, and Ehabo Ehondo, partner and head capital markets, Knight Frank Nigeria. He's currently experiencing some technical difficulties. So to start off this session, I remember going through a study by Harvard Business Review, where they looked at the benefits of collaboration, and they looked at the most collaborative partners of a global law firm. I think it was from 2005 to 2012, and then they honed in on what happened in between 2007 and 2008, and they said that the most collaborative partners of a global law firm outperformed their colleagues during and after the crisis, because when markets are in difficult circumstances, difficult positions, it's always best to collaborate. But especially in places like Nigeria, you don't always find collaboration. And sometimes when you do, you find out that you still see organizations, you still see investment managers and investors and service providers hedging on so many levels. Sometimes it's just downright scary. I mean, so this study, by the Harvard Business Review, showed that at the end of the day, those who made it out of the crisis and made it out on top were those who collaborated more effectively. And that brings us to a number of questions I'm going to be throwing out here. And just start and then see how far we can go in the time that we have. So in your view, what do you think are the biggest roadblocks to collaboration? What are the things that come, in between this need that we have found, to collaborate and see results?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ayo, for this opportunity and for the very warm introduction. I think there are multiple layers to this conversation, and I'm hoping that myself and other panelists will be able to peel up these layers one at a time. That said, one of the things that quickly comes to mind when you talk about some of the issues around collaboration, especially back home in Africa, I would say include our history and the narratives that we've built around them. So let's be honest. There have actually been failed attempts at collaboration, and unfortunately, they say bad news travels faster. So what happens is there's a lot of narratives around collaborations that have failed that would typically hinder people from looking that way, especially because it's almost seen as a no-no. It's almost seen as something that cannot work in our terrain. That said, there's also a lot of collaborations that have been successful, and I'm not sure that we have told those stories properly. I think that in the social media age and in the age of the internet, setups like this where we come and talk about these things, where we now begin to distill positive stories of collaborations, will go a long way in helping us improve on that. Now, the other thing is that most of the fears around collaboration are actually genuine fears. They're actually what you call in today's parlance, they are legit fears, right? And so people have legit reasons for not getting into collaborations. And the truth is, except those particular fears are addressed and looked into, we will continue to see less and less collaboration, even when we know that there's value there. And so I think, without going too far for now, that would be one of the layers of the problem to look at. How can we begin to build positive narratives around the collaborations that have worked? How can we begin to distill, the value to be gathered from collaboration? How can we make this information more available so that people have a reason to think towards it and to work towards it? Nothing will ever really be easy, but you need enough motivation to get into, whatever it is that you're getting into. So I think on that level, those are some of the things that may have affected collaboration here, and we can look at. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, before Okwe, I mean, thanks a lot for that introductory statement. Before Okwe comes in to give us his own perspective on what he feels the roadblocks to collaboration are, you mentioned a very important point, but I'm sure for some reason you didn't want to go too deep into it. You're smiling because you know where I'm going. When you talk about fears, could you give us one or two fears as to why? I mean, what are people afraid of? I mean, it's foreign investment, it's local investment. I mean, if someone is coming in with FDI, that will almost, I mean, for lack of a better choice of words, do wonders, in our markets, whether it's in construction, whether it's even in talent exchange, and things along that line. So, what are these fears that are so big that would rather say, look, you know what? Let's not collaborate. Foreign stay foreign, local stay local, and let's just continue at this low level of performance where we are. What are these fears you're referring to?
Well, it's really a somewhat inexhaustive list, but for sake of conversation, the truth is, first of all, there's a very serious divide when it comes to cultures. We have very different cultures. And so if like in the tech space, if you take a sample of the African funds, right? Whether they're venture capital, whether they're angel investors, whatever it is, and you compare them to their counterparts across the shores of Africa, it's a whole different ball game. Mindsets are different, and this is, largely due to our different cultural issues. There's a serious trust deficit back home, and that typically affects the demeanor of our own investors. Now, it's slightly different across the shores, and so being able to bring ourselves to align in terms of our cultures, our mode of operation, we may even be getting to the same destinations, but our journey styles may be different. All right, that typically would cause some gap, some friction. Because what are we talking about? We're talking about investment into projects that will typically have, lifespans of 2 years, 3 years. So that's a long time if you look at it in terms of the operational side of things, right? And so our differences in culture, differences in mindset, a lot of times will go a long way in causing, that friction. Now, what of local collaboration amongst ourselves? Same thing. There is an inherent ownership mentality that we have back home, unfortunately, where I would much rather own 100% of nothing than in IO to share something with me where we can both bring value. Now, the other thing is a healthy collaboration most times would involve parties with different skill sets, right? And that means that their approaches to their work would vary. Now, understanding is not, at optimum. It means that we will begin to compete. And so where your skill set is brought to bear, I will feel like I may, not be measuring up, and vice versa. So sometimes, because of those inherent, underlying traits of wanting to be boss, wanting to own things, we'll much less just say, you know what, you do you while I do me.
It's interesting when you say a few things. I must bring Okwe in at this moment, but let me try and wrap up a bit of what you said. I remember going through, studying the classics on strategy and then I think it was Peter Drucker or someone who came out and said, everyone should just calm down. At the end of the day, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Now, I found that shocking, but it doesn't even eat strategy for lunch or for dinner. So that means strategy survives to the end of the day. No, this is the first thing that culture eats. Yes, and it's something that I feel we need to find a way of getting around. And, what we have tried to do at my firm, and I've noticed, even your own firms do it, is that we now try to put a lot of markers for accountability to ensure that that trust is engendered. So every time you come in and, you're trying to sell or pitch or push an idea, you make sure you put the right numbers in, you make sure you communicate effectively. I mean, just for the sake of this event, I'm very sure if I were, and it's no disrespect, if I were from a Western country or from an Eastern European country, I wouldn't need to wear this tie. That's the truth. Just being very practical now. But because I know, I know the country I'm from, I know what I'm trying to push out, I know, our cultures aren't really trusted as much. I have to put that brand out there. And it's something that I think, firms in Nigeria are getting, used to now. So you find out that whenever, I think it was the IFRS who released new standards, we jumped on that. I think it was the RICS that introduced new building standards, we jumped on that. NIOB locally released something new, we jumped on that, because we have come to realize that our culture isn't one where, foreign investment or a foreign entity, won't come in. So what we do is to make sure that we push the highest standards possible. But let me get to Okwe now. We've kept you there for a minute. Thanks once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here. What do you think are the roadblocks? And you can just add, what you feel we can do, to get, around them.
Thank you very much, Ayo, for that question. Thank you very much, John, for from the perspective that you shared on that question. However, I'll just put the answer in one single statement, which is a lack of emotional intelligence. It's the major barrier to major roadblock to any relationship. We're talking about a more complex relationship now, which is a working together, where most likely you have worked by yourself and achieved some results, albeit not the best results that could be achieved. So you're now trying to work together with someone else. The question is, what's the value in it? Vis-a-vis the sacrifice I have to make to be able to work with the next man. We not everybody has not everybody's equipped with the level of emotional intelligence for this kind of task. So it's something that has to be learned. And having to learn something means you have to unlearn some things that have been deep ingrained into what we refer to as culture, your way of doing things initially. So it's I'll just sum it up in that single word: lack of emotional intelligence, being adaptability into other people's way of working, into their lifestyle, into their culture, and the lack of empathy to understand why people do what they do the way they do it. If those roadblocks can be taken away, every other thing becomes piece of cake, or lack of a better word to use for that.
Thank you very much for that, Okwe. I want to drill into that, but I think I will get more value out of drilling into the next question, which I'm about to ask. So I think it was a study by Side Business School, that's Oxford, and I think in collaboration with HBR, I think, and they came up with this conclusion that it is possible to collaborate with your competition. Of course, after I struggled past the headline, I was able to read, what they meant by that. Coming from where we're coming from and looking at how Africa has evolved over the years. John, I would ask you then, of course, move to Okwe. Is it possible to collaborate with your competition? And you can now expatiate more on that.
Thank you very much, Ayo, for that. It's a very interesting question. That's one of the most interesting questions here. It's very possible. It's a big yes. It's a big yes. It might sound like an irony, collaborating with your competitors, but it's a big yes. I'll say a few words on that as much as I can. So who is your competition? It's the other company having the same end objective as you do. That's the same. That's your competition. They don't necessarily have to be doing it the way you are doing it, but they have the same objective as you. Now, the same reason why it is popularly seen not to collaborate is the same reason why we should collaborate. And what's that? We have the same vision. We have the same objective. Who better to work with than people or a team that has the same objective as you? However, it becomes difficult again, which is competition. Why am I trying to do something with you that I'm trying to do it better than you? But we need to look at it from this perspective. Every organization, like every team, has their own unique selling points. They have where they are stronger. Company A are both trying to get the same objective, but Company A has a strong point with customer engagement. Company B has their own very strong point with research. I mean, doing their SWOT analysis, you see this is where their biggest strengths are. Now, imagine you now bring those two companies together to achieve the same objective. You now have a single unit that has a very, very good strength in customer engagement and fantastic strengths with research.
I've watched you work over the years, and I'm quite familiar with the levels of success you've been able to achieve. We're looking at what you do, within and out of the country. So I'm not going to drill too much into that answer because, there are a few things that I am seeing. Because, for example, a very popular mindset in this part of the world is winner take all. It's a very popular mindset, and I'm sure we have seen it before, where there are people who, as far as they are concerned, I mean, to all intents and purposes, and maybe because of the way the economy is structured and difficulties and the challenges of navigating the many policy somersaults and economic headwinds, if you're not making it big, you're not likely to be around for the foreseeable future. So the question is, why share if I can do it all on my own, or do part of it on my own and then posture the rest as if I can do it on my own? So I do hear you when you say we want to bring people with different skill sets and combine as long as they have the same objective. But then that presupposes that the same end objective is something that is mutually beneficial, because some people's end objectives in different transactions, in different frameworks, different arrangements is really me on top and everybody else out. I mean, to put it very crudely, everyone wants to be the last man standing. But I do agree with your point that at the end of the day, especially on big transactions, which is why for me, whenever we're working with internationals and they come in, I always love the perspective their transactions take. They're not the local small transactions, even if they're doing it in country, with us and with our partners. They are such that one person, one firm can't really do everything. So you, of a necessity, have to partner, because that's really the only way you can deliver superior value. When you dimension the jobs into different, or the work into different sub packets, and then you give the best in their field, which I believe is what you are saying. But let me move to John. What do you think? Is it possible to collaborate with your competition? Now, your case is interesting because I've seen you on quite a number of projects. I've seen you, do different things, and it's interesting what you've been able to pull off even in Nigeria. But is it possible to collaborate, and how? And then, of course, the various points of disagreement that will come up. What would you say are the ways to navigate around those? I think you're muted, John.
You hear me now? Thank you for that. I think it's neither here nor there. I think really the first question is why collaborate. One of the reasons to collaborate is typically the fact that you can achieve a lot more with a lot less. So playing to your strengths and letting your collaborative partners play to their strengths towards achieving a bigger objective. So if we say that it's good to collaborate, then the next thing will be, how can we do this, like you've asked? And I mean, you already started answering for me when you said, how do we treat the things that come up? I was going to say, we need to ask the right questions. So we want to achieve this big feat. We realize that as LiveVend, we require a collaboration with a Northcote to achieve it. The questions are, why do we want to collaborate? And we have to make that clear. We have to continue to have that pull from our direction, from our objective that says to us, I need to do this because we want to achieve, this on that scale. Also critically assessing our own in-house competencies and shortcomings where they exist, and also understanding what we can pull off by ourselves. Other questions include, what are the typical issues that can arise? So almost like a risk analysis, but it's just, this is now towards collaboration, right? So we're saying, what are the typical issues that can arise? And when they arise, how can we mitigate them? What form of documentation do we need to enter to kind of guide us? What are some of the underlying principles that govern the other organization that I want to collaborate with? And are they in line with ours? First of all, we have to understand that it's not the easiest thing. And so it's not something you jump into. It requires some careful thought and a lot of documentation so that you make sure that you can always refer to the underlying principles for that collaboration. Because, once we get into operational activities, a lot of times, if there's no reference point, a lot can be lost in translation. So I think typically asking the right questions are very critical. Putting in the work to understand, both the front end in terms of relationship and the back end in terms of documentation of this collaboration, and trying as much as possible to stick to this as we go, along the journey. It's not the easiest thing, and we must accept that fast. But that it is possible, and we can do a lot more if we collaborate. So it's something that we want to look into. And I think efforts like this, where we talk about it, where we sensitize, the industry and the space a bit more of the benefits, and some of the pitfalls and how they can be, overcome, are very important strategies as well.
So I have a question for Okwe, but before I get into that question, there was something that came up for you, John, because when a few of my close friends learned that John was going to be on this panel, there was a specific tech question, because you've had over a decade's worth of experience in construction and in finishing and in materials and in logistics and all of that. And then, you've pivoted into tech, and, you've taken off as if you've been there longer than quite a number of people. Congrats once again on the award you got not too long ago. So this question came in especially for you, and I will read it verbatim. So, I have no hand in the question. So it says, how will emerging and future technologies improve the efficiency of local and foreign investment, and what opportunities do you see?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think it's something that we talk about a lot back at LiveVend, because we also always have to ask ourselves very pertinent questions about what we do. Our underlying objective is basically to use technology to improve a structure, a system that already pre-exists. And so for us, it's important that technology isn't necessarily replacing human elements in the space, but it's enhancing them. So to the question, I think technology would basically achieve, that by automating processes, right? What does that do? That basically sees that processes are standard. Processes, can be repeated. It also helps, with increasing efficiency. So where there's heavy dependence on human beings, we can begin to move some of this dependence, to technology, which is typically, more efficient in that area, helping us to be more process-oriented, helping us to be more data-driven. And, one of the beautiful things about data, or one of the tricky things about data, I would say, is that depending on how data is captured, it can either be clean, right? Or let me rephrase that. It can either do what do the opposite. So a little tweak in data can give you a whole different outcome. And that's one of the things that technology does. Technology helps you to process and to collect clean data. I'll give an example with construction. Until very recently, a lot of construction sites still use pen and paper and hardcover notebooks as capturing daily data. You walk into the biggest offices in Lagos today, and at the reception, you still have a notebook where you sign in and write the time, all of that. How efficient is that? And so I'll ask you a question. If you have a problem on a site, and maybe let's say, for example, individuals are missing from your site and you're trying to trace or to track them down? Where do you If I brought you that higher education notebook to begin to sift through dates and times and people in and out, how long would that take?
Very practical.
And so this is a very clear example of where technology comes in. With LiveVend, you log in every activity on your site daily into a cloud, and you can call up that information, in different ways, and you can have it real time. That cuts off a lot of hours, a lot of inefficiency. It also cuts off, potential for error. Because we're talking about Africa, where what education is like, what all of that is like. So technology is really just the answer in terms of coming in, sitting on our existing processes, right? Understanding them, learning them, automating them, and helping us with efficiency. I hope I've answered that question. If I've not, you can.
Oh yeah, I think you have, and the thing about the efficiencies that technology introduces is not only that it gets much more done, in a shorter span of time. I also think it makes things cheaper, and then you can also tweak as you go along. But my next question is to you, Okwe. So, in your view, what are the most critical changes that you feel we must make, in this part of the world, in country, in our approach to, collaboration? Because you started out, telling us about how we need to, be empathetic, to understand, the scenarios, and to look at what next person is going through, so that we can best position ourselves or our businesses. So what critical changes do you think we need to make in our general approach to collaboration, so that we can face the future more effectively?
Thank you very much, Aya. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Right. I think the one of the most important things and the first thing to do is to remove or get rid of that bias that that collaborations cannot work, which is one of the major drawbacks. Because other people have tried it and it is not working, or it has not worked historically, means it cannot work. We need to start looking at it from the perspective or the direction of why did it not work, bottom line, do a post-mortem for it and see why it has not worked. Once we start looking at it from that perspective, we will now start the mindset that we'll now start moving towards the direction of making work. So I think that's the most critical change that we need to make. The second thing I would like to say is to, as much as possible, document every single transaction or every single expectation. But some of the times, the reason why these things don't work is the expectations are not clearly communicated from different parties involved in the collaboration. If expectations are not well set, there tends to be more opportunity or more leeway for disappointments, one, and for dissatisfaction. So I think that's one that's another very key thing that we need to do, set expectations as well. And another thing that I would like to say is, interestingly, is in the line of the question that John answered before. I think technology would actually play a very, very important role also in helping collaborations work. So adopting technology to collaboration has a way of engendering doing things the right way. Technology has no emotions anyway. It's just dealing with the set rules that have been set already by both parties in it. So the expectations are clearly set in the rules that have been in the rules of the technology. With the human interference. Why are these collaborations not working? It's because of clash of human emotions, amongst other things. But if we can have technology as the arbiter for this as much as we can, we'll now start having fewer issues. So, I'll just put it in three key points. Number one is removing the bias that it cannot work. Number two is adopting technology as much as possible. Number 3 is documenting and setting expectations very clearly, which is something that is a major strong point. So I believe if these 3 things are put into place, it will assist and help collaborators work better.
Okay, thank you very much. We're about to start rounding up, so I think we have one more question each, and then we'll just wrap up. But before we go into the final questions, John, you wanted to add something to your original comments on technology efficiency and all that coming into the mix with collaboration and foreign and local investment.
So I mean, I think that there's the broader benefit, of collaboration and the use of technology, in the sense that it also helps us with, improving professionalism back in Africa, which in the long run would also begin to breed a higher level of trust, in space. And so it's something that we want to make sure that we all kind of try to imbibe, and also try to pay forward even to the entrepreneurs coming behind us, where we're leading and we're pioneering, a lot more professionalism through the use of technology and standardization, so that our industry is more receptive, and more appealing for investment and for a lot more economic activity. Thank you.
Okay, I think we just have to take our final question, and it's more of a broad question, and it's something along the lines of this. What do you think firms right now can start doing immediately to at least show that they are open to collaboration? And I know we've mentioned it in bits and pieces, but firms that are looking for more opportunities to collaborate, what do you think they can do? And let's just say, perchance, I'm already in a collaborative effort right now, between foreign and local, opportunities, and things are already going. What do you think I can do now as a firm to improve that? So the question is more of, what do you think I can do now, as a firm, if I'm not seeing any collaborations, I'm not with any local or foreign firm, and then if I'm already in one already, what do you think can be done to further increase the impact of the collaborative effort? So I think I'll start with you, John, and then we'll have Okwe give us the last word.
Fantastic. I mean, I think this question brings me directly to you, Ayo, the research guru that you are. I think we need to begin to dig up a lot more stories around positive collaborations and begin to sensitize, our ecosystem a bit more. I think for those of us who are already in some positive collaborations, we need to continue to strengthen them. Okpeyemi talked about, emotional intelligence. He also made it clear that, there's a bit of work to be put in to make sure these things work. And once we have the right mindset that this collaboration is possible, we want to begin to, put a bit more effort in that space. I think the big issue of trust is something we also need to look at. And I think some of the examples he gave, or some of the suggestions he made, including documenting, proper documentation, of what our terms are very, very important. I think one of the ways to make sure that we solve that issue is to be more document oriented, which is typically not our style in our culture, but it's something that we want to begin to improve on. And I think that collaborations really are an outcome. So we need to understand they're an outcome. It's not something you can force. It's something that would generally flow once all the issues we have outlined are fixed or are solved. So the more comfortable I get with, the next party, the easier it is for us to collaborate. And so while we want to improve collaboration, it's not a call for, companies to just begin to place phone calls and try to, start up things that, that will now become mechanical. It's more about the understanding of the big picture. It's more about understanding of the process, of more or less integrating and then letting things take their course. I think conversations like this, for example, have already started sparking some conversations that I will have with both of you and a few other of our colleagues, after now. And I think over the next 6 months, 12 months, 36 months, we should see a lot more collaborations in this space if we begin to tackle some of the roadblocks that we've discussed here today. So that will be my view on that for now.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, I think I'll just put this in two words. I mean, what do you need to have a very successful relationship with the next person? It's having a sense of trust, or mutual trust, and having a sense of security too. That that I'm safe in this place. And one thing is most important for that. It's very important for that, which is transparency. So I think if companies or as organizations or establishments or groups starts imbibing the culture of transparency through their operations, you will be more attractive for people who or other organizations who have interest in creation. I think transparency is the right word to use there, and that's kind of sums it all up.
All right. I'd like to thank both of you. Okwe, thanks so much. I know from here you have to get on to one or two things that we had or you had notified me of. John, I think I gave you this on a short notice of sorts, but thanks a lot for coming in, giving us your full delivery. We appreciate you guys. So we hope that this will spark the conversations that you have spoken about, because there's just so much that can be done, and the depth of or the kinds of problems that we have in Nigeria, in this part of the world, and even in sub-Saharan Africa and countries around, that need serious, as we would say, collaborations. The kind of problems, I mean, we look at housing, you look at funding, you look at insurance. I mean, we need to really collaborate and get results out. I've been glad. I would have been glad, if we had a Honda and PM Maurice here, but unfortunately they couldn't make it. So I'd like to thank you all once again, and it's thank you all from me. So I think, I think we're done.
Thank you very much, Aya.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great time. I'll have a great day as well. Thank you, Okwe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.